Good evening, and welcome to Behind the Book here at Caltech. We're so happy to see you. This is a special summer version. We haven't done summer programs of this before, but we took advantage of some special people on campus. How many in the audience are part of our surf program? A few of you, great. We worked really hard with our colleagues over there to make sure that everybody, at least in surf. Surf stands for Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowships. And there are quite a few hundred, about 500 or so here on campus and another 100 or more up at the Jet Propulsion Lab. And they're having some really interesting and exciting experiences. I'm Michael Alexander. My title here on campus is Arts and Culture Liaison. So we're responsible for the Behind the Book series. We also produce Movies That Matter, and we're going to be doing something very special. I was brought here to work on the Performing Arts series, and we're going to give you all a chance to see some really remarkable performing arts in the upcoming season. The Getty Foundation is supporting PST, ART, Art and Science Collide, and there are going to be exhibits all over. There's about 80 different institutions. Most of it is in the visual arts. But there are a number of grants that were given for performing arts, and we are bringing in a modern dance company from Taiwan that works with a robot. If you've ever seen the videos of industrial robots doing spot welding on cars, on assembly lines, they replaced the welding unit with a laser, and it now was programmed by the choreographer to move very elegantly, and he has 5 dancers, himself included, dancing around the laser light. That's going to be in October. We're opening the season, though, with performance right here in Ramo Auditorium with a play called Tesla, a radio play for the stage. And it is talking about the life of Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla is going to be played by French Stewart, who some of you may remember from Third Rock from the Sun. And so it's going to be a really interesting cast of Hollywood working actors joining us for just 5 performances, October 4, 5, and 6. You can pick up the brochure that looks just like this out in the lobby, and you'll find out about the other programs. We have a choral group, Tonality, coming in to do a show about climate change, and we have a modern dance company looking at the life of Alan Turing, who was the genius that broke the Enigma code in England, but also had to deal with issues of being a gay man in England in the 1950s. Before I go any further, if you have your cell phones, please put them on the silent mode. And do notice that the exits are at the back. If for some reason there's a need to come down, we have exits on the side as well that you can use. 6 years working here, and we have yet to have an issue. So I'm sure that tonight is going to be as eventless as all of the others in this regard. I want to thank also our sponsors. We're supported by the Caltech Employees Federal Credit Union. And we also get support from the Friends of Beckman Auditorium. And they've been very, very helpful to support programs where we are able to bring in young high school students for our Junior Watson program and for a number of the other programs that we do throughout the year. So I would encourage any of you who can to consider joining the Friends of Beckman. And you can find out about our programs and about the Friends by going to events.caltech.edu, and that'll give you all the information that you need, how you can sign up to get on our emailing list. We don't pester you more than maybe once or twice a month, so we're not like if any of you are getting political requests where you get 4 a day from the same candidate. It's nothing like that. We want to remind you, too, that Caltech is the home for the Coleman Chamber Music Series. They're in Beckman Auditorium about 8 times a year. And we are also the home for the Pasadena Folk Music Society that is usually performing in the Beckman Institute Auditorium. So tonight, we've got a very special program. Betsy Mitchell has been the athletic director here on campus since 2011, and she wrote a book in collaboration with Worthington. I'm going to let our host and moderator do further introductions for the two of them, but you are going to have a chance to do 2 things. One is that you can ask questions by going to the QR code there or going to the slido.com and the 844-8662, and even during their presentation, you can write and submit your questions, and Brian will be selecting those that he can ask to our speakers at the end of their presentation. And also, at the end of the program, we'll be selling books out on the patio right outside the building, and Betsy and Ann will be there to autograph the books as well. Covered that. Brian Stoltz. Brian Stoltz is a member of the faculty here. He is the Victor and Elizabeth Atkins Professor of Chemistry and an investigator for the Chemistry and Chemical Engineering Division's Heritage Medical Research Institute. He is also the chair of the Faculty Committee for Athletics and Physical Education, so a logical choice to do the interview here tonight. And what was exciting for me to find out was that he went to Indiana University of Pennsylvania as a music major, but then decided that he was going to be better suited for the sciences, and the sciences are very lucky to have him. And so with saying that, please help me welcome all three of the speakers, Brian Stoltz, Betsy Mitchell, Ann Worthington, and Brian will do all of the introductions.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a terrific introduction. Thank you, Michael, and thanks for the warm applause from all the audience members. It's great that you all could make it out tonight. It's really a pleasure to sit here with these two fantastic women and very inspirational people. And so I'm going to introduce them a little bit more than Michael did, and then we'll get to some questions and talk about the book. Ann Worthington, to my far right, is a writer who lives in Southern California. She's born and raised in Madison, Wisconsin, where she competed in amateur sports like swimming during her formative years. As a member of the Madison West High School girls team, she contributed to 4 consecutive state championship titles. She was an Olympic trials qualifier in 1984 and 1988, collegiate academic All-American, and as a Texas Longhorns swimmer, she contributed to 3 NCAA team championship titles. In 1987, she won the 50-meter freestyle in the World University Games. She's a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology as well as a Juris Doctor. And now Ann is a retired lawyer and mother of 2 living in Southern California. She's written 2 young adult novels, which get many stars on Google Books, and is working on a 3rd. When she's not reading or writing, Ann enjoys traveling, hiking, and pickleball. So welcome, Ann. Betsy Mitchell, to my immediate right, is hopefully well known to many of you. She's a professional educator and leader, and is Caltech's Director of Athletics, Physical Education, and Recreation, and has been for the past 13 years. Prior to joining us at Caltech, Betsy held the same position at Allegheny College and 2 high schools prior to that, and she began her career as the women's swimming coach at Dartmouth College. Betsy's a 2-time Olympic swimmer with gold and silver medals in both the 1984 and 88 Olympics. She's also a former world and American record holder in backstroke events. She'll tell you that her favorite accomplishments are those from her college years, when she and Ann contributed to 4 consecutive NCAA team championships at Texas. And she was a 7-time NCAA individual champion. They combined talents for many more relay titles as well. Betsy hails from rural Ohio, where her parents still reside. And while coaching at Dartmouth, she took up rowing for fun, and 2 years later, represented the U.S. in rowing at the World Championships. She earned both a BA and MA in Education and Sports Management from the University of Texas at Austin, with additional study at Harvard Graduate School of Education in Educational Administration, Planning, and Social Policy. While at Harvard, she also coached the women's rowing team. When not leading our athletic program at Caltech, she can be found in volunteer service, traveling the world, looking for active adventures, or right here in her garden with Bella, her yellow lab. And she also plays pickleball
Because
now.
Ann taught me how to play pickleball.
So please welcome both Ann and Betsy to the stage. Okay, so here's the book. There's the book. It's a great read. I'd certainly recommend it to all of you if you haven't already read it. The title is very simple. It's More Than Medals, but Betsy, you're a 3-time Olympic medalist. The Paris Olympics are underway. This must bring back lots of memories for you. Do you want to share any of those particular memories with us?
Well, I'll start by sharing a couple of the ones that I actually could share, because so many of them are probably not ones that I should share. No, but Brian, thank you so much for being here with us. Ann, thanks so much for coming up, and thank you all for joining us this evening. The Olympics are exactly what you think they are, right? They're fun. They're the culmination of a tremendous amount of work. They are fabulous, fabulous competitive opportunities. Done well, they are the world coming together in peace. Unfortunately, in both of the ones that I participated in, the world didn't come together in peace. And so if we can start to pull that off a little differently, it will get back to the roots of the thing, and that will make me happier anyway. But I swam in #84 when the Olympics were here in Los Angeles, and one of the memories that I have is standing to receive my silver medal with my teammate Teresa Andrews, who won the gold medal. So we went 1-2 for the U.S. And there were more people in the stands in L.A. Down at USC than there are in my hometown. And just let that sit there for just a half a second, right? I'm from a very, very small town in Ohio. Until recently, I have referred to myself lovingly as a hillbilly. Those days are over. But I was just struck by a tremendous amount of pride, right? Because me being there meant everything to the 8,000 people in Marietta, Ohio, and it still does. And so it was one of real pride in simply being there, in being one of the 2 people from our country that represented our country in that moment. So it was very proud. I have to say that the other thing, when you asked me that question, is I didn't swim very well. I didn't swim very well in the '84 Olympics, and I swam even worse in '88 at the Seoul Olympics. And that's why I say that my best swimming was really in college and at the University of Texas and with my college teammates and the world American records between that. So even just saying that out loud always it's hard for me to say, because it sounds like I'm not happy. But I didn't achieve what I wanted to do on those days. It's not about what place I was. It was about what time I didn't swim. And that's only about me, right? And so when you talk about the Olympics, there's 2 different stories, and I hope that you can see some of that and understand some of that. Like today when Katie Ledecky wins the mile, awesome, and she sets a new Olympic record. It's still like 15 seconds slower than her world record. So there are themes like that, and it helps you maybe just understand a little bit more on the inside. But it was fabulous. It was fabulous, and being 18 in LA and swimming in the Olympics, we had a ton of fun.
Was that your first trip to LA?
That was my first trip to LA. Yeah, that was my first trip to LA.
So let's dive into the book. So it's written really as a memoir of your life, Betsy. And I guess why, first off, I want to hear a little bit about the collaboration of you and Ann, and also, why did you choose to write this book, and why did you do it now? And maybe we'll start with Ann on that one.
Why did we write the book?
Because you asked me to. Actually, it took a while.
It took a long while.
It took a while for you to convince me that I should get on board with this project. I'm very glad I did.
Yeah.
It was very fun, very rewarding. I even learned some things about you that I didn't know after almost 40 years, so it's always exciting. Boy, I think until we had decided that the memoir was not going to be chronological, that it was going to be something different, and that we could come up with the 12 lessons, that's when, for me, it really started to take shape, and I could start shifting all the pieces of the puzzle around from your dozens of scrapbooks.
I'll pick it up there. So I have always wanted to do this, and I haven't been able to do it. I'm much better in the spoken word. I'm much better to an audience. I'm much better to a team, to a group, one-on-one. I can speak these things that really do matter to me and have basically formed my professional career. And I needed Ann to help me, and I needed Ann to figure out how to organize it, and she's a writer, and so I have literally been nudging her for 5 or 6 years, literally. And last summer, I don't know why. Maybe I just out-persisted. I don't know.
May have.
Maybe she just wanted to shut me up, and so then it went really quickly. But one of the things that she referred to, which was so fun about this project, was my mom is a fastidious scrapbooker. And if you met her, you wouldn't think that about my mom by any stretch of the imagination. But I have this chronicle of my first 20 years of life, and so we got them out, and we were just looking through them. And Ann then dived through them a couple more times, I think, to really figure out how to organize it. But it's because of Ann that we actually have the format that we have, and it was just such a joy to do together.
It was a fun project.
It was a fun project. I would also say a word about kind of why now.
Yeah.
I think that as far as it's my story and my lessons, we share a lot of the perspectives in this book. Our swimming experience is not that different from each other than a few medals here and a few races there, but what we got out of it is the same, and that's exactly the same as anybody else who dedicates themselves to a sport or an activity. We all get the same thing out of it. There, I've given away the theme. So I wanted to do this to share those skills in a way that make the message loud and clear that just because I literally have one of everything in my sport, that I get nothing more than anybody else who will give themselves to their endeavor in that way. And that's why I think it's a message that's sadly missing in our cultural conversation right now about youth sports, about college sports, and even about some professional and commercial sports. So I want to reframe the conversation about the awesome personal development things that can come from sport, or really any endeavor that requires this kind of a process. So that's kind of a deeper why for me.
Yeah, that's great. Can you guys share a little bit of the process of how you mentioned the scrapbooks, and I wonder if there were what else went with that.
Let's see. The next, once we had set on what we think it's going to look like weekly. We had a weekly telephone
Schedule. Taskmaster, she's driving.
scheduled phone calls where then I could work, develop things, ask more questions. Yes, we for many months kept that weekly at least an hour, going in depth, and of course there were unfortunately a lot of things that we couldn't quite fit in, but in the book, but.
We also peppered that with several pickleball Sundays, which we then over burritos we would hash out more of it.
We sure would.
There was a structure to it, and that was again helpful for me to get out. But I trust Ann, and when she asks questions, it's easy for me to just go, and so that helped us too.
Well, and I like Betsy said, our youth. Our time spent swimming, AAU, they're parallel lives to a great extent. So I feel like I knew a lot of the questions to ask even before. I didn't have a learning curve on this, so made it a little bit easier.
And how long did it take, the whole process?
A little less than a year.
Okay.
Well, right, but you had a manuscript. We had a manuscript by February.
Okay.
So I mean,
Yeah.
it was August to February. Yeah.
So two lessons a month.
Well, then we get it done. Then we get it done. You know.
So,
Give me some answers.
Sorry.
so what were your favorite lessons out of the book?
Well, one of the most important, and my sweetheart's gonna laugh at me when I say this, is focusing on fun.
I knew you were going to say that.
Because
That's why it's chapter 1.
right. Because if you're not enjoying what you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's studying or music, dance, athletics, part of you always thinks, what's the point? If I can't find a shred of it's not going to be fun every day, but overall. So for me, that's definitely one of the top ones.
It's got to be. I mean, that's the theme. You know, that's the theme. And I think that when you start, talking about youth sports, and we'll do that in a little bit maybe, but that's what gets lost so quickly. So I think that's why it's our big chapter, and we put it first and all that. I mean, I could read them to you, but then again, you could buy a book. So, but honestly, losing is part of the process. Is a really critical one for me. And then when you mess up, don't give up, which comes a lot later in the book. But it's not all unicorns and rainbows in any walk of life, in any activity, in anything. And so we have to get back to a place where we're educating our kids about, you just stay with it.
Yeah.
You just stay with it. Whatever it is, just stay with it.
Yeah, I like the don't mess up one. I love baseball, to bring this up, but you make an error, you have to move on to the next. You have to put it behind you and move on to the next thing, and that's a huge part of that game. And so that really resonates.
And Brian likes a game where you can paid millions and millions of dollars for only doing something a third of the time. It's amazing. I mean, it's amazing.
So these are really, I mean, the book, it really does resonate because the lessons are really global in nature. And so, maybe can you draw a little bit of those lessons from amateur sports to your everyday lives? And you want to go?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I mean, I get it, law school is not Caltech, but having just some of these experiences as a youth and able to make it through some of the worst days that you can imagine, with professors berating you and just being able
People at Caltech would not understand what you're talking about. in any way, you gotta.
just to keep going. If you have that goal, and you think it's worth your time and effort to just keep going. So I think in any academic environment, it definitely, raising kids, that can come into play too. Yeah. So,
yeah. Mine would go. I talk a lot about balance, right? Both in actual training. There's a bunch of chunks in here where we talk about times where I really didn't do what the typical path would be or what my coach wanted me to be, and it was all about knowing myself enough to just only bite off what I could bite off, right? And only trust myself about what I needed to do. And I was very coachable too, but I think that is one of the things that, when you ask the question about bridge to other areas of life, at the end of the day, you have to know yourself. And only you are charting your way through life. And so maintaining that balance and maintaining your core through any activity, I think is an incredibly important lesson that well transcends sport or art or dance or really anything. Transcends school. At some point, school is over. Even when you go back and work at a school, right? At some point, school's over, and you have to pivot to something else. I think the other theme that we talk a lot about is confidence, and then a lot of times when I do talks, people want to know about my confidence, or how did I approach confidence, or how do you get confidence, or what's the magic? And confidence is earned. There's just no other way around it. Confidence is earned through repetition, through trial and error, through believing in yourself, but it's earned. It doesn't just happen. I think that's a really important thing for our culture to get back in touch with.
Yeah. You touched on it a minute ago with the professional sports and baseball. We see, certainly on TV, we see a lot about professional sports and on the internet. And along with that has become a lot of the commercialization of college sports as well. We don't see so much of that at Caltech, but we certainly watch and enjoy, I think, a lot of the commercialization of sports as a culture. But what would you say? To youth sports today. What's the message there that you're bringing out in this book?
Thanks for that. So there's 30 million kids in the United States, and about 12 million of them play high school sports, and about 500,000 of them play in college. And we have damaged the fabric of youth sports lessons by pinning all of our hopes on maybe I'm going to be the one professional player that comes out of my class, grade, school, town, whatever it is. And so we're living in a world where we're starting from that, right? And we've gotten mixed up this notion of dreaming about what one wants to do and hoping and thinking, oh, wouldn't that be cool, or looking up to that, and actually thinking it's going to be me or you, right? And so we're, as a culture, we're making all kinds of decisions for the very, very slim minority of people who play sports, rather than the great big majority of people who play sports or want to play sports, or whatever the activity is, right? We're really focused on just the one aspect of it. And right now, and this is actually the second book that we're going to write. Second book that we're going to write is really going to go much more in depth into this topic and whatnot. But really, my concern is that we're losing focus on fun. We're allowing it to be a transactional culture, short term. Oh, I want to get the quick hit. I can't stick with anything, and that's what sports has been a great educational tool to this point. So,
Yeah.
I can go on for hours and hours and hours about.
In the book, there are a lot of references to your parents, and I think by extension, in advice to sports parents. I'm one, or was
Oh,
one.
boy.
As,
There's no pressure there.
And you as well. I guess what pieces of advice resonated most with you?
Well, I wish I'd written this book when my kids were young. It might have helped. But I think, unfortunately, even though as a sophomore in high school, it never occurred to me I could go to college and swim. It never, even at that late stage, it had never occurred to me that someone could do that. I have to admit, as a young parent, in the back of my mind, had that lovely thought of, oh, maybe I'll get to go to all the high school games, or maybe they'll even get to play in college and do something, and I'll get to be that fan. Well, it didn't work out in any way, shape, or form for that, but I do remember just common sense watching my kids when they were little, and if they didn't want to go to practice, to me, that's okay. It's not fun. We'll pick a different activity. Changing activities, not being beholden to one thing. And then as they got older, if they were in a sport that they really enjoyed, they had to want to do it themselves. It was their thing, not mine. If they weren't motivated to get up or go to practice or be prepared, there wasn't anything I could say or do that was gonna help them. So I just let it go.
You're a great parent. Anne's a great parent.
Well,
She's a great parent.
That's very nice of you to say, but
So, you know, my parents, this is an homage by both of us to my parents. They're both still alive, they both still live in Marietta. They were incredible sports parents because it was my thing. It was absolutely my thing. And, you know, my dad would, a couple of times, gave really poignant, you know, advice in a moment when I needed it, like, you're not going to quit in the middle of the season, right? Like, okay, you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it, but we're going to evaluate at the end of the season, right? We're not, you know, just quit today, right? Like, okay, don't go to practice, and then get back in there, and then we'll evaluate, not just quit. My dad also, when it came time for me to think about starting morning practices, you know, my dad said, sure, but you're getting me up. And he never got me up. He never got me up once, 12, 13, 14, 15. He never got me up. And 5 minutes later, we were out the door and he was driving, you know, or making my breakfast or whatever. But that was incredibly, you know, and I don't know who told him to do that or how they just figured out to do that, or maybe he was just, you know, curmudgeonly. But my parents, you know, they couldn't have told you my time. They didn't care whether I swam or not. You know, they just pitched in and ran the bullpen and timed and did all the things that parents do. But, oh, how'd you do today? I'm fair. I'll try again tomorrow. You know, it was really, and it really allowed it to be mine.
Yeah.
It really allowed it to be mine, and that's what I'm really grateful for.
Yeah. So you both were, you know, teammates for 4 years, and have known each other since then. But in the book, Betsy, you say, at Texas, I learned the importance of having a team in individual endeavors. Can you elaborate on that and how, you know, those lessons and how that lesson really resonated and impacted your career and life?
Sure. I mean, swimming is a very individual thing, but the two people in particular at Texas, our teammates, Debbie Risen and Tori Trees, I mean, they kicked my butt in practice every day. I mean, they far out-trained me, and that doesn't mean I wasn't trying, you know, but just to be in the thing together and picking each other up, patting each other on the back, saying, you know, keep going, try again, them getting after me when they knew I wasn't actually training as hard as I could. I mean, it just changes everything. You know, swimming on relays together, I almost always swam faster on a relay than I could, and not just because of the you know, the relay takeoff, but you're just doing it for someone else. And we had an extraordinary group of young women who were given an amazing opportunity at the University of Texas. I don't know what.
Yeah. I don't know what to add to that other than, yes, your lane mates. I swam with the same two young ladies for 3 years straight. It was just the three of us every day in that lane, and I depended on them. They depended on me for, come on, we got, you know, two more, we can do this, or just the encouragement to get through the hard part, and then they're always cheering for you when we're at meets. I wanted them to swim fast too. Of course, I wanted to swim faster, but I wanted them to swim fast too and be their best. So,
you know, you both must be fiercely competitive. I know you.
I'm not competitive.
You are, Betsy.
I'm not competitive. I'm not competitive. Sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry.
But it's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting thing to think about. You have to be to be excellent at that level. You have to be competitive. There's no doubt about it. But it's amazing that you can be competitive in a team setting, and for each other, as you say, and yet individually. It's really an interesting dynamic of a team sport, yet an individual one. And
I did cut you off, but I'm gonna make my point. So I don't see it that way, and I don't see it that way because for me, I see it as just personal striving. I needed Debbie and Tori. I needed them to push me. But you cannot compete, you cannot race, you cannot win medals, set records if nobody else has ever done it. So in that sense, I value my opponents and my teammates tremendously because without them, I would be doing it in a vacuum, and what's the point of that? Yeah. Even though, really, to be as good as I was, I absolutely just focused on the clock and what I was doing. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things I did really well was to actually be able to focus, right? Have an incredible ability to focus, and not think about anybody else. Yeah. Maybe it's just language, but for me it's striving. Maybe it's for you, it's competitive. I have no need to beat someone else. I just want to do as well as I can do.
That's okay. All right. I believe that.
Good.
I might call it competitive, but with yourself.
You can call me whatever you want.
And you've known Betsy for a long time. I won't say how long.
We weren't going to go here.
30 years, I think it's been. So, what did you learn that was new in the process of writing this book?
Well, I think that her philosophy in that, because I guess I'd never really thought about it. I think when I was young also, I thought, I want to get a best time. And I really wasn't concerned about who was in the lane next to me or who swam in the heat before me. But really until she started talking about it and framing the conversation like that, I think that's a really good way to look at whether you're in class. And yes, I want to, get a top grade. But it's not that I want to beat the person next to me or be better than, I just want to be the best that I can be. And for me, framing things like that, even a pickleball game.
Okay. She's competitive.
It's best.
She's very competitive, and she kicks my butt.
It's best if I frame it that way.
We write, one of the chapters is, compete, don't compare. And I do think, and that's where we talk a lot about this, I do think that youth sports in general and perhaps our culture at large, right? We're constantly looking over, what's the other person doing? What's the other person doing? And what we were trying to describe is that's no bueno. You got to just worry about yourself and do the best you can and let the chips fall where they may. Because you'll make yourself crazy, really, if you're worried about what the
when we realize today with social media, it's almost impossible to just focus on what you're doing. So we didn't have that burden when we were growing up. We had no idea what someone else was, so you didn't think about it.
Right.
It was much easier to stay focused.
Great. So I think I'm going to move
technology.
to Slido.
California
now.
Institute of Technology.
So thank you so far for your questions. Keep them coming.
Oh boy, here we go.
I'm going to start with a really easy one.
Good.
Which gets to what we were just talking about. What do you think about when you're swimming all these laps?
Well, Ann was a sprinter. Ann was a sprinter. What did you?
I was still swimming a lot of the same laps.
Okay.
Particularly in practice.
You have to have a really good song in your head.
Yeah, a really good song.
That helps.
It helps that the 80s had the best music, for sure.
Well, that did help. I remember in high school doing a lot of Spanish verb conjugations. Going through things like that.
I should say I did my math facts in my head, but all of you would know that's not true. I had a lot of songs stuck in my head. You know, what you think about is right.
Yeah. Betsy, you mentioned the importance of balance. Caltech student athletes in particular have a lot to balance. What advice do you usually share with them?
Well, most of the athletes at Caltech were athletes in high school, and so this is an extension of what they've grown up doing, and they know how to balance things. So the kinds of things that are challenging as they come here is, you know, school gets harder, even for our amazing students. School gets harder, life gets harder, the problems that face people get harder, right, when you're 18 to 22, so they've got all that. And really my advice, what I talk with our young people about is to just try to keep it simple. You know, just know your priorities, know that you can do 2 or 3 things and do it well. I don't know if you can do 5 or 6 things and do it well. Yeah. And so you have to make choices. You know, you just have to make choices.
Another one, did you find that swimmers from other countries shared your attitude about having fun?
Well, we had a few swimmers at Texas that were
They had a lot of fun.
from other countries.
Yeah.
Great Britain, South Africa, Mexico. Where was Sarah? Canada, I think. Yeah. And I haven't been to that many international meets, not as many as you, but I do remember it being, or in my mind, it was an upbeat, positive. People seemed excited to be there, happy to cheer for their teammates, and that.
So that's absolutely true. You know, at the Olympic level and at the World Championship level, in the 80s, you know, there as I started in the first comment, there was a lot of politics in sports, and you know, 1980 there was a boycott, 1984 there was a boycott. I'm sure in '88 there was a boycott. You know, and that was at the time when it was going from this lovely, peaceful, joint adventure together, everybody happy to be there and the world coming together, to no, it's just another battlefield. And no, it's just another way for countries to exert their dominance over each other. And that was, you know, evidenced by the doping that came into sport and still exists in sport, and cheating in a variety of ways. So yes, they enjoyed, and yes, but for the countries that, for some of my competitors who were in those countries, specifically East Germany, China, and the former Soviet Union, I don't know that they were having very much fun. Yeah. You know, many of them were being drugged against their will. Many of them were being forced to pick partners in marriage, to breed, literally. So, you know, I don't think those people were having very much fun, but they were using it as a tool to survive in their world. Yeah. But I think generally, you know, on the world stage, when what you see what you see in the snippets on NBC, you can trust that. I mean, there is a joy to being there. There is a joy to being there.
In the book, you talk about changing high schools, moving away from home. You also talk about going from UNC to University of Texas, so making changes. And the question was, you know, how did you choose your coach at those schools and various places you went? And I guess it might be interesting to see, you know, how much of the coach was the draw of where you decided to go as you moved around.
Sure. So one of the chapters is
relationships matter.
Relationships matter. Cultivate key relationships. And so we do talk quite a bit about my coaches and those choices. You know, my choice to leave Marietta and go away to high school for the last 2 years was driven 60-40, 70-30 by school. And also I was getting better as a swimmer and sort of outgrew the town, the resources that the town could provide for me. And so I chose a school, and the coach happened to be there and be this larger-than-life personality, and was very, very magnetic, and also a huge jackass. Like, and so it began this this good learning on my part of, I'm going to listen to what the coach says. I'm going to try to do what the coach says. But at the end of the day, I can only do what I can do. Mm-hmm. And so I had these really healthy back and forth relationships with coaches, because I was going to make my own choice at the end of the day. When I left UN, when I chose the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill to enroll in school initially, I didn't quite believe in myself all the way then yet. And I chose to be a medium-sized fish in a medium-sized pond, instead of what I perceived would have been a small fish in a big pond at Texas. And it came down to UNC in Texas, and I chose the safe route. And I was almost immediately disappointed in myself. I did not have a good relationship with the coach. He was more worried about what my primary opponent, my teammate, who was the sitting American record holder in my event, he was pretty focused on her, and he sort of had me waiting in the wings, and I don't think I liked that very much. I left school the Monday after the NCAA championships, and I dropped out, and I figured it out after the fact. And then so I called our coach at Texas, and I said, I made a mistake. And he had been such a class act in the recruiting conversation, and because when I told him I was going to UNC, he said, well, it's a bad choice. I wish you were coming to Texas. If we can ever do anything for you, let me know. Yeah. And he had grace with me, and so, but I think it's that key in terms of coaching relationships for me. It was, I had this, yeah, I'm going to listen, and yeah, I'll do some of those things, but I'm also just going to do it my way.
Yeah. At what age did you become swimmers?
Oh, 5.
5.
Yeah, I was 6. Yeah. It was 1972, and there's a story in the book about my brother getting to sign up for T-ball and me not being allowed to play T-ball. And so we were driving by the YMCA and said, summer swim lessons, and my dad was like, you know how to swim? Get in there. And that's how I became a swimmer, because I wasn't allowed to play T-ball.
And when you were younger, what were your best and worst strokes? And then how did that change as your careers developed?
Ooh, I started out as breaststroker. It just was one of those little things, you plop me in the water and away I went.
Frog. That's the frog one. That's the one that looks like a frog.
But then generally transitioned to IM and freestyle. And backstroke has always been my absolute worst stroke. I am still just feel like I'm floundering.
It's a little like the turtle on her back.
Yeah.
She does that, but I can't do breaststroke. But I can't do breaststroke to save my life.
That didn't change.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I was primarily a freestyler and a butterflyer, and I didn't really become a backstroker until, I don't know, I was 15 or 16.
Yeah. There was one. Were you always the best? If you weren't, at what age did you start to overtake other swimmers?
I was not always the best.
Yeah.
I started to overtake other swimmers in 1983, my senior year in high school. Like, really.
Yeah.
That's when I thought I might actually might do this. It might be going my way. But I think that for me that had I mean, certainly I won races when I was a youth swimmer, right? But it just wasn't a dominant thing in my life, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I started to focus on it late in high school, then it turned around.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose Anne, you were an outstanding swimmer as well. So at some point, same question.
Right.
She was better earlier than I was.
I think so. Maybe a little bit. There are always the age groups for younger swimmers. So if you're 10 and under, well, yes. If I was 8, I wasn't necessarily winning as much as when I was 10. But I do, and then being at the top of your age group. So I do remember winning many, high point awards for being at age 10 and at age 12, and that just having quite a Grand time.
I was focused
just
on
loved
eating
it.
Jell-O. I was focused on eating Jell-O under the bleachers, like
I just-
screwing around then.
In terms of setbacks, there's a question here. Did either of you experience significant injury during your, well, that says professional sports career, not professional sports career, amateur
Right,
sports
yeah,
career?
right.
And if so, how did you cope physically and mentally with that?
So I didn't really ever have an injury. I had one time, and it was the 3 months before Olympic trials in 1984, when I dropped out of UNC and I went to Cincinnati to train. I was doing so much more volume of training than I really had done before that, and my shoulder got a little crabby. I was never diagnosed with anything. I didn't ever really sit out or anything, but it hurt to the point that all I could really do was kick. And I wasn't gonna sit out, and so what I just decided to do was I did the same sets as the rest of my teammates who were swimming, and I did them kicking on the same intervals. And so, I just was like, well, it's this kind of coachable thing, right? Like, this is what they want me to do. I really don't think I can do that, but what can I do? And so, and that was the beginning of really developing my legs in a way that did then set me apart. That was really my only injury.
Right. Well, I didn't have any acute injuries, but by the time I was done with swimming, I had very severe rotator cuff problems that literally I couldn't sleep, kept you up at night. It was, so I knew it was time then just to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Hang up the goggles and.
Doesn't hold her back on the pickleball court. I can tell you that.
There's a question here. What changes in a sport and other sports that enables athletes to continue to break records?
Oh, God. To break records.
Sometimes it's the rules.
Sometimes the rules change. So my world record was broken when rules changed. But it held as an American record for 15 more years. So I don't know, maybe. They're technology rules, right? So yeah, sometimes the rules actually change, right? I had to touch the wall on my back, then turn around, then go the other way. You don't have to do that now. Other kinds of technology change. So the suits changed a lot. They, right, were plasticky and buoyant, and then we had to dial them back to a textile or cloth material. But nutritional strategies, training strategies, the amount of biofeedback and technical feedback that right, we were just at the beginning of, well, let's take a little videotape of you here, jump out here and see, this is what you swim. We want you to actually put your hand in this way. But it's just so advanced now. So all the sum total of all those things, I think the sum total of all those things.
Yeah.
What's your go-to meal before a competition?
Twinkie.
Twinkie.
What?
Very healthy.
It was Twinkies. We ate a lot of bagels. We had a lot of bagels. We kept. There's this one bagel place in Austin that our team kept single-handedly.
I think
Right. Bagels and turkey sandwiches and
Right.
bananas.
yes, things that are relatively easy to digest.
Okay.
Bread.
Twinkies.
Bread.
Twinkies. I'm not lying. I ate a lot of Twinkies.
Is eating before swimming a myth, or is that something we should avoid?
Well, Victoria, are you here? I don't know. Get a biologist. I don't know. Get a physiologist. Certainly there's something to, right? If all the blood, right, when you're trying to do the digestive process, if all the blood rushes to your stomach, it's not going to carry things away from, right, the muscle product that away. But I don't know that I ever had a problem eating before I swam. Twinkies.
Yeah.
Well, right. I don't think we ever had any big meals, right?
We didn't eat a T-bone before.
No. Yeah, I wouldn't eat a burger before, but I would eat some pancakes, something like that.
Which is the same as a Twinkie if you put a lot of syrup on it.
Okay. All right.
I don't know what.
All right. A little whipped cream. Okay.
Betsy, will you be involved in the 2028 Olympics at all?
I will. I don't know in what capacity yet, but I've had several conversations with them, yeah.
And who's the coolest other athlete you met on Team USA or otherwise during the Olympics?
I'm giving away all the good parts from the book now. I guess that is why we're here. So one cool thing in 1984, the dorms down at USC was a big part of the village, and so a lot of the US team was staying in the dorm by the pool. So one day I got onto the elevator, and there were two other people on the elevator with me, and it was a real study in physiology. So Mary Lou Retton was a little pixie gymnast, stands literally. I don't think she's 5 feet. And then me, who was this size when I was competing, and then Michael Jordan. So we were in the elevator together, but what I remember is it was sort of small, medium, and large. But I will tell you an MJ story, because we were at North Carolina together for that first year. He wants you to believe that it's all about Wheaties, but I'm telling you, man, we were eating a lot of Captain Crunch. A lot of Captain Crunch. He might have got paid for being on the Wheaties box, but he was consuming lots of Captain Crunch.
Captain Crunch.
This is a good one. Hey, can you tell us about your internal drive and discipline as kids in college and then today? And how do you view that as different from what kids are going through now, and as kids, college and beyond?
Try again. Tell me again.
Your internal drive.
Internal drive.
And discipline, and how's that changed? And how do you perceive the change now? Like, how does that discipline and drive have to be different for kids now, or is it different? Is it the same?
Well, Ann was a psychology major.
Well, I'm just going to have to go with the anecdotal, since I have two kids, and they are polar opposites. One is driven, and she has always been. It's just, I'm going to get this done, and and it was stick to it, let's do it. And the other is, maybe I'll get to it, maybe tomorrow. And nothing has changed from them from the minute they were born. Nope, they're the same. So they will follow whatever path in life. That has not changed.
Max is going to get there. I think this bit about internal motivation from maybe when we were kids, 50 years ago, to young people today. There's such a, and I'm not a historian, but you have to remember what the last 20 years in our country has been, and how the events in the public square have impacted their youth, which were just not the case for us. And then you add this external focus of various kinds of social media and various kinds of distraction, entertainment, and those are the big. To me, those are the big, right? None of it's evil, other than the awful events that happen, in school shootings and whatnot, and wars in the world. But the entertainment that is here for available, right, to keep it from being sort of a negative distractor rather than just a stress relief, right? Has to do with the amount of time, right? So one of the things that we write about was my experience as, I was interested in lots and lots of different things, and I participated in lots of different things, from camp to trying different sports to different activities and vacation with my family, and we did all those things. And I think sources of entertainment have narrowed, right? The kinds of things that young people are entertained by today have really narrowed, unless parents are working really hard to keep abroad. And I think that is connected in some ways to what then motivates people. Yeah. That's the best I can do.
How do you define the difference between amateur sports and recreational sports?
I wouldn't see a difference.
Same.
I wouldn't see a difference, right? I mean, amateur comes from the word Latin, which is to love, to do something because you love it. To recreate, right, is to have that feeling of pleasure, of release, of enjoyment. And so I don't know that I would distinguish between the terms, really.
I don't think I would either.
Oh, well,
No.
look at that.
We agree on something.
Betsy, what do you consider to be your biggest accomplishment at Caltech?
My biggest accomplishment
So far.
at Caltech?
Caltech so far, that's a
Oh my God.
question from our audience.
Oh my God. Well, honestly, there's so many. There really are so many. It's been such an incredible 13 years of building all aspects of the physical education program, the recreation program, and our intercollegiate teams, our facilities. There have been so many. Honestly, I almost want to say adding women's soccer. You know, we added women's soccer 7 years ago, in part to try to help President Rosenbaum's vision of bringing our undergraduate population more to 50-50 in a gender split. And that was, you know, when you're trying to be a good team player, you figure out what in your area you can do. And we had 7 women playing on the men's team as little as in 2014. I mean, it's just, we were so far behind, and just sort of things like that. And so they're not necessarily revolutionary things, maybe outside of Caltech, but things like that. Certainly seeing the young women who have come here, who have played on the soccer team, and the enjoyment they get out of it, and having that be a part of why they come to Caltech, that's been pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's been pretty cool.
Yeah. So the book is really a love letter to amateur sports.
It is.
And you alluded to this earlier, and I heard a lot about it on a podcast I watched with you on it. The rumor is there's going to be a second book.
There is going to be a second book.
What can we expect from that second book?
Yeah. So,
Focus on it.
well, what I want. So this in my mind, this is sort of right memoir and my parents and my experience, and it's to try to be to lean back into my Olympism that I leaned hard away from during my professional career, and now I'm sort of coming back to it. But the second one is about what's wrong. What's wrong with college sports? What's wrong with our youth sports, right? I try to frame things only in a positive way, and we've done that in this book, and the themes are there, but I think we want to be a lot more explicit about where we've gone wrong and what we can still do to get back to some things that are hopefully going to be better. Youth sports, college sports, the Olympic movement. So it's envisioned as a book of essays with some other pretty powerful partners. As I look around my Rolodex, for those of you who don't know what a Rolodex is, look it up. As I look around my Rolodex, we've got some pretty amazing and accomplished friends in the world of sports and sports writers. So we're thinking it's going to be a book of essays about what's wrong, NIL, transfer, professionalism, over-commercialism, over-specialization, and hopefully what we can do about it.
Yeah. Well, we certainly look forward to that one, but I would strongly encourage everybody in the audience, if you don't already have a copy,
Get a copy.
get a copy. And both Betsy and Ann will be out in the lobby to sign copies of the book after this. And it'll be available in all the formats, including the audiobook. If you don't have Betsy in your ear already, which I did, so I didn't need an audiobook. Anyway, it's been a fantastic conversation, and please join me in thanking again Betsy Mitchell and Ann Worthington.
Thank you.
And thank you, Brian. Thank you, Michael.
Well, you can see why we're very lucky to have Betsy Mitchell heading our athletic program here at Caltech, and I hope you're planning to be here for quite a number of years more. Just want to remind you, they will be out in the patio area to sign the books. We've got quite a supply there for sale. Please pick up one of the brochures about opening doors. Also, you should know that the archives have an exhibit that they're going to be doing in 3 different locations on campus as part of that Getty project. And JPL got a grant. They're working with the city of Glendale. And if you go to the Brand Library, they've got exhibits there as well. Brian Brophy is doing something in collaboration with JPL and has got a play that is going to be part of this big Getty Pacific Standard Time project coming up this fall. So please look for all of that. And please help me thank once again Betsy Mitchell, Ann Worthington, Professor Brian Stoltz for sharing such interesting information with us this evening. Thank you.